Hello, and thank you for joining Swami Chaitanananda and I on News from the Heart. We are hopefully talking about things that are going on in the world and from a perspective that may be a little more unique but important for the way that we live and practice here at the Movement Center. And things that are going on right now that I thought it would be really interesting to get your take on, Swami, is this concept of, I often feel like I get put in the category of being a conspiracy theorist, and I don't think I'm a conspiracy-oriented person, but then I also hear people being called climate change deniers, for example. So it seems like we have this huge scale. You're either a conspiracy theorist or denying what seems scientists are finding with climate change, with the events like Fukushima, events like chemtrails, things like this happening in our world and how they're affecting us. I wanted to get your take on that.
Well, first of all, I'm probably a conspiracy theorist, but I think it's really convenient for the media, and particularly for corporate media, to lump people into extreme categories and then to ridicule them. That really undermines any kind of serious discussion about, any of the issues that are going on in our world today. There are powerful forces at work manipulating our political environment, our economic environment, and our climate. And one of the things I'm least informed about is chemtrails. But, I don't really care about any of it anymore. It doesn't affect me very much at all. And the reason is because there's nothing I'm going to be able to do about it.
Do you really feel that way for all of us, that there's nothing that we can do about some of these things?
What I think is that because the media is controlled by 5 corporations who have a vested interest in America being in a permanent state of war, the war on terrorism, I think that there's no chance that the media is going to represent the manipulations going on in our world today, affecting the quality of our democracy and the quality of our environment and, the way in which resources are distributed in the world. I don't think there's any chance that they're going to actually inform us in a fashion that will make a real discussion of these topics possible. And so, my own take on it is that it is really important for us to begin to focus on the quality of our own lives every day and the quality of our community lives. Meaning, each of us, like I live in a community, and this community has a specific and spiritual focus. But, all of you who are watching here may live in other communities, whether the community be a suburb of Houston or Ferguson, Missouri, wherever it is. This community that I live in exists in Portland, Oregon. Wherever the community that you live in exists, it's important to begin to pay attention to the local happenings and the quality of the environment within your community, and to begin, as best you can, to take some responsibility for lifting the quality of that community through your participation. Because, we cannot affect what's going on in the macro picture, and I believe increasingly we are being denied access to the activity that is going on in the big picture. I mean, for instance, in the United States, the quality of international information, the quality of information about what's going on in other countries has completely deteriorated over the last 15 or 20 years. And we do know that there's a civil war going on, say, in the Ukraine. We do know that there was a Malaysian airliner that was blasted out of the sky, as part of that, the activity of that civil war. But, it's completely been obscured from us who was responsible and why that, terrible tragedy took place. Why is that? I mean, many of us are affected by issues related to international travel, and you think it would be important to us. And the United States has been deeply involved in supporting the Ukraine against the Soviet Union. Why is it that any real information about what's going on there is being denied to us?
Your answer to why is that is the part that makes you a conspiracy theorist, I'm assuming. So guess that's, why is that?
I think that, there are two parts to that. One is Americans are narcissistic, increasingly. We don't care. But the second thing is that news organizations in the United States are focused on the most trivial and stupid things going on in the country to the exclusion of actually informing us about issues that will impact our democracy. So, and what's going on in the whole world around us is important to us because we're spending hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars supporting countries that, in fact, may be, up to their eyebrows in international terrorism. How much money are we giving Egypt, in supporting their military every year? Anyway, so I think the only place where we can get accurate information and the main place where we can have a definite impact is by involvement on the local level. And as we become involved in the local level and understand the issues relative to the local level, we will become much more informed as participants in the political and economic processes of our entire country. And I am strongly, committed to the view that, we need to take care of our own self, our own country, our own cities, our own states, our own countries.
Our own house.
We need to deal with our own domestic issues and not be, not let all these red herrings obscure our perspective. I think in the United States, abortion and homosexuality have for the last 40 years or 60 years been used as red herrings to distract people from the real issues that are important to them and their daily lives, their financial issues. I think that the wealthy have used religion and preachers and priests to distract people from the financial issues, distract people from looking at where the money in the country is going, by keeping them all completely, crazed about abortion and gay rights.
And I mean, gay rights and abortion are certainly important to individuals in their daily lives, but your point being making that a big deal instead of just letting people be and make their decisions and moving on to important topics.
Well, yes, I'm saying that rich people use these issues to distract poor people from the fact that all the jobs in the United States got shipped offshore about 35 years ago. And why was that? Not so that we could be a stronger, better country, but so that unions would be undermined and rich people could make more money by paying less for labor. And there's so many layers to this discussion, whereas, you know, and abortion and gay rights has...
It's a whole other topic, you know.
We'll talk about that later. But, you know, it is important for us not to be distracted by stupid issues, and in fact to be focused on, I think, two things, and the one thing is civil rights for everybody, and I mean equality of our community. And the other really important issue about that government is supposed to exist to deal with is the distribution of resources. So I think, you know, there's nothing I can do about chemtrails, and perhaps they are actually downing me out. You know, if they're, I heard the other day somebody tell me that they're going to use aluminum iodine or some such thing to seed the clouds in California and try to get a lot more rain happening there. Maybe. For sure, there's nothing I'm going to, even if, however I squawk, and how many ever of us squawk, if that suits the financial interests in California, then there's no way that we're going to have an impact on that discussion, because California is about the 5th largest economy in the world. So what we have to do is really accept the fact that a lot of things are going on that we really cannot have much of an impact on, and start to focus on the areas where we can have an impact and actually take responsibility for making that impact.
So if you live on the Pacific Ocean and your local community is being affected by potentially, and most science would say, in fact, radiation from Fukushima, you try and do something within your local community.
It's, you know, and that's another thing. As soon as Fukushima happened, within a month, all the federal radiation monitoring stations on the West Coast were shut down.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying, and in a way it makes sense. It's, my mind has a hard time. Maybe other people's minds are distracted by Kim Kardashian's ass or whatever other thing the media is shoving in our faces. I find my way to this bigger stuff, and that's where my energy goes. And I hear you saying, for a lot of people who are watching, I think our demographic of viewers care about these things.
Well, it's very interesting. For instance, Huffington Post used to be a site that I looked at on the internet for information. And then and it was kind of progressive. And then
it has changed.
She sold it, and increasingly it has advertisements that are being presented there as news, and slowly it is turning to, you know, more sort of subtly derisive views of you know, alternative views of events that are going on in our world today. Another site that I used to look at for news was a site called Raw Story, which, you know, I thought, well, it just tells you a story and just says something or another, and I liked that. It was pretty stripped down, just news. And increasingly they have become involved in the supporting the pharmaceutical companies against people who are opposed to vaccination. They are involved in representing seriously the views of climate change deniers. I think that the internet is a place for false information. It's not a place for true information. Today I looked at the New York Times and found the New York Times was editorially taking some positions that I strongly disagreed with, and was very surprised to see them representing. But increasingly they have become kind of a spokesperson for, you know, upper middle class New York City points of view. You know, don't bother me with what's going on in the world, just tell me stuff I want to hear. So
your argument, though, which I think is really interesting, is to pay less attention to what's going on in the world because we can't do much about it, and pay attention to what's going on in our community.
I think if you, here's what, yes, that's what I'm saying. And I'm saying that because increasingly, I think the internet is being manipulated in order to confuse people. I think that information is being falsely placed there. I mean, I look at a guy like Alex Jones, who I used to look at too, who is so crazy that even I, who am sympathetic to alternative points of view on almost every topic, you know, think there's something wrong with the guy. And really, I've come to the position where it is kind of my opinion about him that he is being paid by the FBI as, you know, to source all this information and sort of generate controversy that attracts, you know, people's attention, and the FBI gets to follow them. It sort of reminds me of, you know, the person who substitutes for you when you're not here. Carrie Kaplan's father was a member of the Communist Party in Fort Wayne, Indiana in the 50s. And he was a very intelligent guy, very sharp guy, who, you know, pointed out that of the 14 or so members of the Communist Party in Fort Wayne in the 50s, 9 of them were FBI employees. Remember that at Occupy Wall Street, an enormous percentage of the people who were staying on site during Occupy Wall Street were in fact FBI agents. I think the internet is a place that exists to set us up and, you know, gather information about all of us who might not so willingly swallow all of the artificial sweetening that the government and the corporate media put out about events going on in the world.
It really, you know, it sets us up to either be a conspiracy theorist or a denier.
Right.
Almost.
Well,
right.
and
like that's what they. See, okay, fine. This episode has now. I'm a conspiracy theorist.
That's the paradigm that we are all being pushed into, and the real point of it is to paralyze people
and polarize
and polarize, but also paralyze those people who are unwilling to be polarized, and to identify those people who might be polarized and, you know, sort of be prepared to do whatever. So I think, you know, if we're paying attention to the quality of the places where we live and, you know, taking some kind of personal responsibility for participation in the discussions about what really meaningful choices exist for us in the places where we live, we are beginning to take a right step toward developing a global view, you know, and that has some possibility of working.
Yeah, the grassroots is the approach to making a global.
You have to start local and continually look to the big picture.
As opposed to how I started this conversation, which was looking at the big picture.
Yeah.
All right. Wonderful lesson. For my heart, I hope for yours too, and that's the trick with the way that I think I'm enjoying approaching these subjects with Swamiji is I came in here with a question in my head and you brought me down into my heart about some really important topics and how we can each do things. So focus locally on what you can do locally. It helps us get grounded, unparalyzed, a little less polarized, and actually make a change. I like it.
Amen.
Thank you.